Intertextual Cardboard Experience.
Hello, and welcome to Intertextual Cardboard Experience. This is episode 2, and with me today I have Taylor Reiner, most commonly known from Taylor's trick-taking table and all of the work that Taylor's doing in trick-taking game these days, which is a lot. So extremely excited to talk to him today, and yeah, just go with it. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited.
Yeah. So again, obviously we've been in like communication, but the first part of this, before we kind of get into, I guess, the interview portions, is I have a trick-taking quiz for you.
No, okay, gotcha. I'm excited.
All
Let's
right,
see.
and it's kind of an absurd quiz. All right. Some questions are questions, some are not. Some have right answers, some have wrong answers.
Oh no.
Some any answer will work.
Okay, okay.
And I also have no like authoritative presence over trick-taking games. So
But if I fail the quiz, I have to delete the channel, right? And just give up everything. I have to
mhm.
give up the taking card. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
good.
mean, like, which would be a really sad day for the hobby. But no,
Yeah.
I do not foresee you failing.
Okay. I feel
Okay.
good.
All right. The first question I have for you is it's a bit of a softball. So I'm gonna lob this one in there. Trick or treat?
um, um,
There is a right answer.
there is a right answer. I'll go trick. I'll go trick.
All right, you got the right answer there. Okay.
Yeah, my Halloween skills. My muscle memory kicked in.
Okay, now we're getting again. These are all over the place. Some of them are like legit, some aren't. But
This is
number
great.
two. So in your videos,
Mhm.
you have when you set up the playthroughs, you always have little characters and player tokens.
Yeah. Yep.
In your opinion, what is your favorite or best player token? Or who's the best
Oh,
gamer? Who's the best trick taker among those
that's great.
tokens?
You know, I have some that are almost like in and of themselves that should be good at trick taking. So like one of them is a pin because a lot of them are pins. I just started collecting through life, but one of them is like a pin of a ace of spades card, and I feel like that is very referential, and I feel like that probably would be the best. My favorite, I was doing a game called 12 Chip Trick, and so I was trying to get chip related things. I try to theme my my players, I guess is what to call them. I try to theme them, and for chips, I was struggling to get enough chips, even though it's a three-player game. So I had like a wood chip, and then like uh, a potato chip, and then the last one I couldn't come up with it. So I think I just like broke a potato chip up into like little chips, and I think that was my favorite. Just the chip theme.
The
But
chips.
yeah, but the chips. I think one of them was tough, and I have them actually right next to me. But one of them I have like a Growlithe and an Arcanine.
Hmm.
And what I didn't realize was when you're in the middle of a teach, like they're really easy to confuse the two, like conflate the two players. And so as I was editing them, I was calling like Growlithe Arcanine, and I would just edit in a Firestone. So in Pokemon, you just evolve to the next Pokemon. So it helped. Yeah. So they've been confusing, especially if I use player pieces to as like a player, if that makes sense. Because then it just looks like a huge mess on the board. But yeah, I think my favorite was either the crushed potato chip or Growlithe. We'll go with that.
Hmm. And then yeah, we know that kind of like the meta pick that
Yeah.
the card pin that works well too, but
Right.
not all right, that's good. Okay, we're back to kind of an odd one. And there's a right answer to this, and it is trick taking related, so I'm kind of like
Hmm.
guiding you in the right direction, but I don't think you'll know it. I'm sorry. What is the best video game released in 2001?
Whoa. The best video game released in 2001.
I don't even know if it's the best. It's a good game. People like this game.
2001. I'm trying to put myself in this headspace. So 2001, I was 9 years old. I'm trying to even find a video game in 2001 that I have. So I played a lot of my PlayStation 1. We had one as a family. And I want to say 98 had like Zelda on N64. Ocarina of Time. Is that 98? And then, oh man, 2001. I want to say Tekken 3. That'll be my answer.
If Ocarina of Time was 98, so you get some like partial points there. Good guess.
Metal Gear
Uh,
Solid. Or is that
Tekken.
98?
Sorry, what'd you say?
Metal Gear Solid 98 as well.
Let's check out Metal Gear Solid. 98 as well.
Oh
You're
man, why am I
you're on
98?
you're on for 98. Let's see when
Uh,
Tekken 3. If Tekken 3 is in the 2000s, you get partial points.
it might
Oh,
be.
Tekken 3 is 97.
Oh.
The the correct answer, because there is a correct answer here, and I said it was trick taking related, is SSX Tricky.
Oh, nice. Oh my gosh. That'd have been so good. I um I was a Cool Borders kid, so I never got into SSX. I missed the boat.
I
Um
remember Cool Borders. That's taking me back.
yeah, Cool Borders 3 on PS1 was like the vibe. Um
I think
but
Cool Borders and the Jet Moto games on
yeah,
PS1 were something.
yes, Jet Moto. Yeah, we would play like the Butterfinger and the Mountain Dew. They were like branded whatever they're called, Jet Motos. I don't know if it's, I remember that as a kid, always wanting to buy Butterfingers at the store because of the Jet Moto games. Yeah.
Hey, there the branding worked.
SSX.
And
Sorry.
admittedly, I didn't play a ton of SSX Tricky either. I've definitely played it, but I was just
Yeah.
it's there. Okay, this one actually has nothing to do with trick taking, but kind of going back to the player tokens and me genuinely being curious and also not having a ton of watching experience in these films, and hopefully I'm saying it right. What is your favorite Studio Ghibli movie?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, because I use a ton of them for player tokens. Yeah, that's such a great point. I have behind me, I know you can see it, but those not seeing, I have a lot of Totoro art on my wall. And I think that has to be it. It was one of the first ones I saw. I love the way it handles kind of like a childhood wonder in film. And it it kind of captures everything I love about studio. I never say if it's yeah, if it's Ghibli or Ghibli or whatever, but I have a ton, I have a ton of like Totoro pins, and they do make a good appearance or two because also in that movie there's also the cat bus, and there's so many trick taking games about cats. I think that's one of the bigger themes, and so those show up a ton. So yeah, I'd have to say Totoro. I don't know what maybe second would be Kiki's Delivery Service. That one's also a winner. Yeah. I'm actually thinking back if I could re-answer one of my favorite pins. An earlier question. I went to PAX Unplugged and they let me teach and play Cat in the Box and stuff. And I remember wishing I had some Totoro pins from the cat stuff. But when I was teaching, I was like, oh, I really need player tokens. That's just kind of like a shtick I like to maintain. So I was like digging through my pockets and I had like my car keys as a player token, and some chapstick, like the the hotel pass, like my key card into my room. That was great. So that might be my actual answer, going all the way back.
Going back to the some of your cat ones or the impromptu ones, the cat ones, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
totally.
No, that's good. Yeah, I was curious because, like I said, I saw a lot of those player tokens and kind of part of this. I mean, it's a primarily board game focused podcast, but I kind of want to explore, shows, movies, books, and just other games, video games, and just kind of like seeing the connections. And I also want to kind of keep tapping into some of my underexplored uh, mediums or even, genres or in this
Yeah.
case, just like publisher producers of certain movies, and
Mhm.
I've only watched Spirited Away,
Oh,
and
that's
that's it.
wonderful.
I mean,
That's a really
obviously super good, but
right.
that's it. That's all I saw.
I feel like that's a really interesting thing though, because a trick-taking Ghibli game would probably sell so well, just with that wonderful art and kind of imagination to it.
Yeah, maybe it'll happen. Maybe you can design it.
Yeah, someday. I do actually think IP work would be super fun. I, I'm reading are you familiar with like Mistborn or like Brandon Sanderson
Yeah,
novels?
definitely familiar. Haven't read any, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my friends recommended that I read it, and in there's a bunch of kind of powers based on different types of metals. And it feels like, oh man, this could be a trick taking game too, based off the different metals and the different suits. And you kind of, I think when I'm so ingrained in trick taking as I am so often, I see it like in different mediums as well. So that's really fun. I feel like that'd be really cool to find the right medium to make another trick taking game, like a thematic one with.
Yeah, I think. Oh, yeah. I think that's interesting too because again, I don't. Okay, I like slash love trick taking games. That's one of things that I play a lot of games at like one or two players. So trick
Hmm.
taking inherently kind of gets bumped a little bit. I mean, there are two-player trick taking games, obviously, but that's usually not what I. That's usually not what I lean towards, I guess, when I'm playing two-player games. But I've
Yeah,
got so many. But I love watching your channel. I love following trick taking, and it's one of those things that you know, growing up in Wisconsin where I am, people play like euchre and sheep's head, and I've been like a sheep's head kid for a while. So when I got into board games, and then there were trick taking was big, I'm like, yes, this is
yeah,
great.
right. That's the thing. I think it's so interesting that uh, I almost think of trick taking as kind of a separate medium, like talking about mediums. The times that I've met people and they found out that I do trick taking stuff, and they're like, "What is that? What is trick taking?" And I'll explain kind of usually very popular games like spades, hearts, euchre, sheep's head, and people will be like, "Oh, I know, I totally know that. I grew up playing that, or my grandma taught me that, or things like that." And I don't think the word trick taking is very modern understanding of it, but it's like the games themselves are like invading everywhere. So I feel like it's interesting that people have usually, like most people probably have played a trick taking game in their life, but they just don't know the word for it.
Hmm. Yeah, and wow, we can probably talk about it later, but it is cool that it can be so universal, and it's
Mhm.
neat that you brought up that when you're reading these books or just doing other things and you see like trick taking in the other mediums. And I think so. I don't know if you played it or familiar with it, but they came out with a oh my goodness, like what am I blanking? American Psycho trick taking game.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was a shock to me just because the IP itself, I feel like when you do an IP, and maybe this is misguided, but I feel like you're trying to sell people who like the IP to buy the game just for the IP. And I didn't know American Psycho had that many weird. I was gonna say diehard fans. Maybe that's a pun, but it seems like an interesting IP to pull people in. Um, the trick taking itself sounded interesting. I haven't played it yet, but I genuinely think trick taking is such a malleable genre of game that I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot more IP, trick takers coming out. But yeah, the American Psycho one shot. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that yeah, I would just say that no commentary. Like I haven't played it, can't say much, but it was peculiar to say the least.
Totally.
No slighting of it. Maybe I'll try it and play it sometime, but
No, I'm with you. I watched like the Dice Tower news, and I think they were covering how Robo Rally got like a Transformers reskin, and the the comment was like, "Oh, how would the mechanics kind of work with Transformers? Like, what's because the Robo Rally is all about like confused robots running into each other and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, well, it's going to sell well because Transformers is such a strong IP." So like the business decision made sense. So like American Psycho is funny to me because I'm like, oh, the mechanics probably will work and it'll probably make sense thematically. But like the IP choices.
Yeah, it's a cross section that hopefully they found and were able to sell to.
That's the diagram, right?
Very cool. Well, so far you are not failing the quiz, but we have many questions to go.
Oh man, I'm nervous. That SSX is great. I should have thought about context more. But yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. This one will be tricky. That was actually unintentional, but I say TTR, you say blank, and it's related to board games at the very least.
I know. I was gonna say Ticket to Ride, but no, I'll just keep it. Ticket to Ride. That's a solid. I like TTR's Ticket to Ride just because the legacy version's out. It's on my mind.
Okay. I I when I put out that as like an acronym TTR, I feel like Ticket to Ride was going to be the answer, but it is actually something that you and many people have said, but it is the trick-taking renaissance.
Yes. Oh no. Why am I failing? Yes. Yeah, I first heard that I think by Mike Delicio from the Dice Tower as someone who I think he was seeing a lot of people, or maybe it was Chris, but they were seeing a lot of them come into the studio, and I know like the Dice Tower gets sent probably tons and tons of games, and so they I think have such a good barometer of um, I don't know if it's plays, but also just like the gaming zeitgeist. I know that they have like their own local store, and they have cons where they can see like date or counts of checkouts for games and like how technically popular it is at conventions. But I think like they have a really good ear to the ground or kind of the pulse of uh, which genres are hot right now. So when they said something like that, and then I think someone on Rado's channel said something like that, I was like, oh yeah, I feel like it feels like it. You never know if you're just in such a bubble though, which like I am. Trick taking bubble.
But yeah, I think you're right in that a lot of these, I mean, honestly, most channels are talking about trick-taking games or listing some of their favorites, or they're they're big. So
Yeah. I I had kind of a weird phenomena growing up where I was really into Pokemon, but it felt like a thing that like only kids were really into. Like it wasn't too mainstream. Um, and I would see it places growing up and be like, oh no, Pokemon's actually like a generally popular thing. But I would still be surprised. It always felt like Pokemon was this like personal thing that when I saw it outside in the world, I'd be like, oh whoa, this like hidden like secret thing that I know. But it's like obviously it's one of the biggest things ever. It's like on planes and like I think it's one of the biggest like franchises ever in terms of like sales. But it always felt personal if I saw someone with like a Pokemon shirt. I'd be like, hey, we're like in this club. So trick taking feels like that now, where when I see like Rodney from like Watch It Play It cover like Cat in the Box, I'll be like, whoa, like we know this like small thing. But then I realized like, oh, Bezier has like huge Cat in the Box signs and like it's a huge hit for them and things like that. So I do it feels like that to me where it's like, is it huge? Is it bigger than I expect? And I just still have this like underdog mindset, or if it is like a renaissance for sure. I hope it's the latter.
yeah, and probably something we can talk about a little bit more later once we leave the quiz too. But it is for you very a unique position where you said kind of were maybe in this bubble, and then that bubble has grown. So
Yeah, totally.
that's cool. Speaking of, kind of one of the things that has come with the growth or the renaissance of trick-taking games, we're seeing, again, I'm not an expert, so this is why it's a quiz for you, so I can be learned as well, is the crossover with, trick-taking and, other types of games like area control or whatever it might be. But what is one unexplored or kind of untapped genre crossover with trick taking that you would like to see?
That's such a great question. I think what's super interesting is trick taking can kind of be as how do I say this? As like light or heavy in the game design, like a game's design as it needs to be. So for example, like Brian Boru has May Follow, and it has kind of a looser sense of trick taking than say Tindahan. Same designer, same idea, like trick taking area control. And it's interesting how like other mechanics kind of do that too, where in Lost Ruins of Arnak, I think the deck building part of it is a little lighter than Dune Imperium's deck building, or how Great Western Trail has like a little bit of deck building, but it's a little bit lighter, or you don't have to focus on it, I guess. But what I have seen a lot of has been area control trick taking. I don't think I've seen there's like the outlandish things in me because I personally love craziness. Like I would love to see dexterity trick taking. There's some that do that. There's one that's kind of like a stacking trick taking one, but like crokinole, would be fun to see. I think that's just because that's kind of a goofball in me. But I have seen some really interesting mechanism mashes that I think make both of them work really well. I think Inside Job was a recent example of like social deduction trick taker that I think people are really, really enjoying. Shamans as well. I I don't want to um mention it too much, but I'm really into like deck building and trick taking. So that's one of the games that I was making. I've seen some other people try to uh or they have the games that are coming to market as well, which are trick taking deck building, which is really cool to see. But I feel like that's also a fun space because the idea that like you play trick taking with, or you get dealt the cards that you play trick taking with through your own decisions is cool. So you don't really have like the luck of the draw. Something to where the side mechanic that you attach to trick taking like makes trick taking really interesting, as opposed to like two like water and oil or whatever that is, vinegar. But yeah, I would say dexterity is my interesting thing. Like I don't know what the game would be if it was like trick taking and crokinole, but like the size of the disc is trump, or something like that. Something where it'd be really fun to have, because Catacombs has like I pointed because it's over there. Catacombs has this idea of like harder to flick discs or larger, smaller or smaller. And so something to do with like Trump in that would be cool. I just like dexterity a lot, so I think it'd be fun to see those two combine. That'd be my wish.
That's that's funny because when I crafted that question and my brain was spinning and kind of thinking of funny things that I would like to see, or outlandish or what have you, was kind of dexterity. That was like the number one. And I think I don't know. I think the thing that would be the balance point would be how much do you weigh the trick play versus the dexterity element? Like how can you get them together? But I mean, I guess that's what dexterity games are in general too. So if you know that's what you're getting into.
Right? It's I think I try to mention that sometimes when I cover two mechanisms mixing, is you want that fine balance. And sometimes players who expect that hook that they hear, like, oh, dexterity trick taking, and they're too big of a lean towards trick taking or too big towards dexterity, I think you're going to disappoint some of those fans if you don't balance it well, I think.
Yeah, well, my goofy brain has been interested in trying to like throw some things together. So if I ever put together a dexterity trick taking game, I'll let you know.
Yeah. No, I'd love to play it. That's a high on my priority list for sure.
It'll be very well produced too, so don't worry.
Nice, yeah.
I've got a few this or that, so we can take as much time on these, but maybe not as in depth as some of the previous ones.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one, grain of salt or pillar of salt?
I'm going great assault. That's a classic. It's just I think I say that phrase the most for sure. I feel so bad having any bias. There's such a thing in me where, especially because trick taking community is pretty fervent in like uh I still feel like kind of small. So I kind of know a lot of the people who I cover the games of. It just like is the natural thing. I was talking to a friend about how the board game space feels very communal still. Like you'll go to a con, you'll run into Matt Leacock and you'll be like, hey, I like Pandemic, just like one of the hugest games of all time. And he'll be like, yeah, that's awesome. Like I'm so glad you liked it. Like very kind. Where like I couldn't imagine walking up to like a movie star or like a director or something, right? So getting back to the original grain of salt thing, I feel like a lot of people reach out and they're super nice and they're like, hey, here's my game. Or like even if it's super published, like Shrish, who did Arum, is a pal, and like that game is blown up at Gen Con. So I feel like I always have to say grain of salt so much now, just because I feel like so many designers are nice and they reach out and they're so kind. So yeah, pillar of salt.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe maybe some game will earn the whole pillar, and it's not just a grain; it's the whole.
Yeah,
whole
exactly.
pillar.
The
But
pillar. Yeah.
I when it comes to reviews and kind of what you talked about and how you do want to give kind of like that disclaimer and credit. I think when I'm not going to try to review games. That's not kind of the purpose of this. Is just to talk to people and explore things and whatnot, because
Mhm.
I don't know. This is what I want to do, and it's a little bit different. But I think for people that are aware of some potential bias and recognize it and give the grain of salt and everything like that, it's open, it's honest, and you kind of reword some of your thoughts based on that. So you're doing what you can.
Yeah, totally. I yeah, it's such a interesting tightrope, and I've talked to people who have done reviews in the past and stopped, and then people who didn't do reviews and are starting, and they hit that same um roadblock, like when you're in an industry where if you are even mean to someone, like you might run into them. So that is like another dynamic. So it was it's a tough one to walk. So I always just try to say pillar of salt, and then hopefully that is enough. We'll see.
Yeah, in general, if I were to like talk about specific games, I'm probably gonna have to throw in disclaimers because if I'm reaching out to designers or publishers or anybody and talking to them, I feel like you have that kind of built-in relationship, and it's well, I like this game, I like this person.
Totally.
I hope you like it too.
Yeah, no, totally.
All right, next, this or that. We have Slefka and no trick included, or
Yeah.
Card Passel and the Trick Tower.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Um EFKA specifically has been so nice. And I think it's one of those things where sometimes someone who's, so big in the scene and so high up, you're nervous of ever like talking to them and stuff. And EFKA actually reached out and was so kind and asked to like give a shout out on one of their videos, which meant so much. And so I uh whenever I see someone like with higher up or like a lot of subscribers or whatever, like be so community focused and kind, I feel like that's so awesome. I think that video specifically, I probably have to pick Slefka just because that video specifically so it's so hard to how do I say this? So like every April I try to do, kind of a month of similar style to other video board game people. And the Dice Tower has kind of a formula where they, have an intro, they explain the game, they explain how to play, and then they have final thoughts, which is actually kind of similar to how I do my videos. So that was a little bit easier to do. I think more of the gags were dressing up like Card, Passel, and trying to edit in the word trick in all of their graphics. That was a fun one to try to do. But with no pun included, they um they have kind of a just such an interesting format. Sometimes Efka will do like an hour-long video on the idea of like what is, I think they're blood on the clock tower, like social deduction, like kind of all the context around it, which is so interesting. And then sometimes they'll just have like a 20-minute video on Blitzkrieg or the most recent one on trailblazers. Just it'll be so many different forms that it was really fun, but like a little bit more of a nuance approach to try to make that video. So I like that one more, and I'll have to pick that one just because it was so wild. And I think at the end I'm kind of just like laying down and just like going myself being like, I don't know how to make this video anymore. So that was a trip. I like that one. I'll do that one.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good note on, no pun included, too. Those really in-depth video essays and even a 15-20 minute review is going to get pack that punch of that, all that information and context, and really get you as much in as little short of time too for the shorter ones. So
it kind of blows me away how much like work and effort and detail and how great all their videos are. It's something to, I think when I was growing up and I had to do like speeches for class, I was so nervous to even do like a 5-minute speech, or like a 10-minute speech. Like that was like so terrifying to me. But now, like videos I think are on average around 20 minutes or 15 minutes, just because there's so much to cover, I feel like. But like they have such a good job of like packing densely 15-minute videos that you come away from being like, whoa, like I learned a lot, I laughed, I felt like all these different emotions in that 15 minutes. So yeah, they do a great job.
yeah, perfect. So Slefka and no trick included, a good answer there. The final this or that, side table or coffee table?
Oh, it was funny because when I was doing random videos that didn't really fit with trick taking, and I was like, oh, I'll just do like a side channel of just like dumb stuff. It's called like a side channel. And then I was like, oh, I want to reference coffee table. And I was like, I think that's a thing called side table. It was one of those things where, have you ever like just been unsure if that's a phrase at all?
All the time, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think I was forgetting the word. It was turnover, that pastry, like an apple turnover. And I'm like, is it a turnover? That sounds weird. That doesn't sound like a word. And I was like, I did the same with side table. I was like, side table a word? So I kept thinking coffee table. But I did some research and side tables are a thing. And so so side table is my answer. That was a long way to get there.
Side tables, very, very useful. Perhaps underrated at times.
Yeah,
I think you get the right answer. I like the side table videos that you've made. And personally, the coffee table for me, that's where I play a lot of my games, so that's a winner. But that's my quiz. That's not your quiz. So
true. The coffee table is a close second. I like that one a lot. Out of 2, but yeah.
hey, tables are good.
Yeah.
All right. Only a few more, and then I'll get you your final grade. Trick taking is to board games as blank genre is to film.
Oh, that is such a good question. I really like that. It's interesting. I personally, this might be a bit of a cop out, but I personally love short films. They're like one of my favorite things ever. And so I went to college and it was computer science, but then I did a minor in film, and I took a class on the kind of like the structuring and kind of the importance of like short film and how it has like ripple waves on like a lot of genres. And I know it's not quite a genre, it's more of like a format, but I feel like trick taking is almost like the short film of the movie industry, just because oftentimes it's an idea executed so well. And it's not just the idea of, short films are shorter and trick taking, games are often playtime wise shorter, but I think it's the idea of it's often a very lean design, and you cut to the quick really quick, small rules usually, and you get kind of to your point quickly. I personally love to see, like, I watch the Oscar shorts every year. They'll like compile all of them, and it's one of my favorite things to do because like in one, hour and a half or 2 hours, you can see a bunch of these different films and go through all this kind of like a roller coaster of emotion. And that's almost what I feel like after like a night of trick taking is like you'll sit down, you'll play like five trick takers, you'll get such wild different feels, and that's kind of how it feels. So I'll go short films, kind of a bit of a different angle, but
I think
that is
I think that works. So with that, this is not on the quiz. Is there a recent short film that you've seen that you want to plug and say, hey, people should watch this?
you know, um, that is a great one. I recently saw, I think it's called Ice Climbers from last year's Oscar nominated, and it's an animated film or animated short about uh it's the idea of it's so tough to give like a pitch on a short film because you don't want to you don't want to ruin it. So one sentence could be the whole film, but it's the idea of it's like this father and son living up on a mountain, and they collect ice and they deliver ice to the town below. It's really really cute. Let me double check if it's called Ice Climbers. What's it called? Ice Ice Merchants.
Okay.
That is my plug. Ice
Ice
Merchants.
Merchants. I will try to keep that tab open and check it out.
Yeah, I don't know if it's. Oh, it's on. Is it on YouTube? Maybe. I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
Hopefully it should be there, not one of those things where it shouldn't be.
Totally. Oh yeah, like one of those yeah, that was filmed someone's camera in a movie theater. Yeah. Um, but yeah, that's my plug. That's a good one.
It's great. Like I said, I've got ever-growing lists of everything, but that'll make the list.
No, I think that's almost why I love like trick takers or short films is hopefully the recommendation isn't too much of a time sink. But I'm with you. The lists, they don't stop. Don't stop.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with recommending something a little bit longer to people if you're really passionate about it. There's some things that people should do, watch, listen to, read, but again, time is limited and the lists don't stop.
Don't stop. Do not.
Okay, we are home stretch.
Love it.
In your day-to-day life, do you prefer may, must, or must not?
Ah,
So not trick taking related, just
yeah. Right. Um, that is cool. So I I'm a developer, and a lot of times like in work I do a lot of must just because like in coding, if you get like one character off or like one, semicolon or anything, the code won't work. So I think in my work, I'll go must. In life outside of work, I would say may. The nice thing about this channel is it's done a kind of an fathomable job at introducing me to a lot of trick taking enthusiasts around the world. And a lot of times they'll be like, you should come to this con. We should play games here. And I'm starting to feel more May lately. And just doing that, even though I don't know if time allows it. But it's been really nice. It's been a lot of traveling and seeing the sites from a perspective of trick taking, which has been really, really exciting. So I think outside of work, may, inside of work, must. And there's been some must not follow, I feel. I think my diet is almost must not follow. um, yeah, I feel like for some reason, lately I've been just eating every different type of food imaginable. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of all three in my life so far.
That's good. Just like trick takers. I think for me, I'm gonna answer with none of these. For some reason, I think I'm like a pretty laid back person in general. But the one thing that gets me is if I like am doing, so this isn't may, must, or must not, it's like am, and then someone's like, hey, can you do this? And it's the thing that I'm already doing. It
Oh,
it gets
yeah,
me.
I know it. I know it. Yeah, oh, totally.
And
I
I wish I could let it roll off my back, but I think I just like making more of a fuss than anything in the moment. It's nothing
I
personal.
no, I get that. Me and a friend dislike that so much that we had a joke where if we ever saw someone about to do something that they'd already do, they'd be like, "Hey, could you like when there's someone like that sit down on chairs? Like, could you sit down on that chair?" Like that's just a little joke.
Okay, so it's not just me.
No, you're in the totally in the in the right science side, yeah.
Same question, different context. So
Hmm.
for trick-taking games, do you prefer may, must, or must not?
Ooh, super good. I I think I think most people would say it depends on the game, and but I feel like that's obvious. I would say overall, must follow is more interesting to me because I kind of like working with a limitation and banking off that and then playing off that. Um, but yeah, there are some maze that are wonderful and some must nots that are wonderful. I think though, if I were to rank a lot of them, I think most of them would be must follow. Yeah.
All right, good. Another stellar answer. This is the last one on the quiz. And okay, I hope the phrasing or this hypothetical situation, it's meant to be more in jest and not actually talking about, you know, serious things which do probably unfortunately occur. But a new government comes in, messes everything up, and starts limiting what we can have. They
Mhm.
come over to your house. They say you have too many trick-taking games. You can only have five. First off, are there any that just spring to your head right away that make that five? Like any easy ones? Like I need this, and this.
Oh man. I um yeah, that's wild. So I currently am at I want to say like 450 or 500 or something crazy. A lot. Um so I think a lot of them are definitely like novelty that I could get rid of. There's also that whole thing of and this is again kind of like a cheat answer, but there's like the Badger deck, which is like a bunch of suits. They go from 0 to, you know, 25 or something. And so they handle like 50 games. So without saying like that or like a deck of cards, I think the ones I would pick, I love one of the crews. I would have to pick one of the crews, probably the crew two, just because it does the crew inside of it, which is great, and then does more. Uh, I think it's also like a great intro trick taking game. So you always want one of those. I think one that has a ton of like crunch and depth to it. I think there's some really, really heavy ones. Bridge is one that, people have dedicated their life and career to. So that would be one like kind of desert island idea. Pichu comes to mind, Haggis. There's some really good, like really deep ones, Vera. Um, and then I would want ones that I think tickle the like I'd want them to be almost more disparate from those. And I'm thinking of some of my favorites, like ooh, I'm looking at a couple. It's so tough to pick five. I mean, five is a great number, but I would almost want a Taiki Shinzawa in there just because he's so classic. I don't know if I mean I have Doi in front of me. That one's a classic one that I would probably pick. And then oh, the last two, I don't even know. I wonder if I want like a really long one. Like Kofor Yas or something. It has like 3 hours of gameplay, which is pretty good. Um, um, but yeah, I'll pick Kofor Yas, and then the last one, oof. Hmm. Maybe like I My Favorite Things that has like a party element to the point where you you lean more on the players, so then you're less like restricted in what a game is, and you can kind of infinitely play because it's always just like players, bouncing off each other. So those are my. I am hearing a knock at the door. Answers. No, no, sorry. Those are my. The government is not at my door. Answers. I probably shouldn't say that. But yeah, those are off the top of my head.
Good. Well, we'll hope that you do not have to go from about 450 to 5 anytime soon.
Yeah, a 98% drop or something. That's a tough one.
Indeed. Speaking of percentages, I will arbitrarily give you a 95%. You retain your channel.
Thank you. I opened up I had the mouse over the delete button. I was ready. Wi-Fi is good. That is very good. I'll take the A. Thank you. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that was such a great quiz. I feel like that was a very well researched. Like, are you familiar with Nardwar, the music interviewer?
Mostly from like short clips and things like that. Yeah.
He does something where he does such um investigatory excellence that the person getting interviewed is always like, whoa. So I felt similarly. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I don't think I'm at that level. He'll come up with relics or artifacts from these like rappers past when they're like 12 years old, their first mixtape. He's like, do you remember this?
Yeah, if you were like, hey, yeah, your fourth grade teacher said that trick taking, like, you remember that? I'd be like, whoa. Um, no, but yeah, that was great. Thank you.
But yeah, 95. The only minor deductions for some of the really ridiculous and specific ones I had, which that's all
That
right.
SSS Trixie, that'll be what I'm thinking about at like 2 a.m. tonight.
Well, hopefully sometime you can uh, have the opportunity to play it and exercise those demons.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the only way it'll get out.
Well, awesome. So I mean, in that quiz, there were a lot of things that we got to talk about. One thing that I kind of wanted to just bring up and talk about with my experience in watching your videos, and I kind of talked about a little bit of my experience in trick taking games. I play them as kind of much as I can, but overall, I don't get to play a ton. Obviously, played a decent amount of both of the crews.
Yeah.
And because I said I do play solo, I'm starting to dive in there. I did good number of plays of Fort Northwood.
Yeah.
I like Jekyll versus Hyde. Like I said, as 2-player option.
Yeah, for
Most
sure.
most of those plays on Board Game Arena, but a few in-person ones, and
Nice.
that's a fun one. And then I think the other one that I play the most outside of those few would be probably Skull King, just as an easy one to get a lot of people to just be goofy with.
Really. Yeah, I think that's actually one of the more requested videos for the channel, just because I think that's a huge entry into trick taking for a lot of people, especially modern trick taking.
Yeah, it's able to like scratch my itch, and then I get like that group. I'm like, ooh, maybe next time we'll play one of the other 20 ones that I haven't touched yet.
Totally, Michelle. Opportunity.
It will happen, nonetheless. But yeah, so like I said, kind of grew up and with family and friends, got to play a lot of sheepshead, but then transitioned into the modern hobby a little bit, and then saw that trick taking was thing, started seeing your videos, subscribing, watching them, and and I think with that, it kind of like a weird thing is that my conception or feel of like trick taking games has almost kind of like melded with the videos that like you put out. And I'll watch them. A lot of times I watch my videos when I'm doing dishes, so that's why I still don't mind doing dishes, because I can watch videos and stuff.
Totally.
And with yours, there'll be times where I watch some of them twice. Like sometimes I'm just watching and listening, and I just kind of get in a trance in the flow of you talking. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. And then
Yeah.
it's about a game that I was interested in. I didn't actually like pay attention, like what the heck was going on with the mechanism. So I go back and rewatch it. But
Yeah.
But what I guess what I'm getting at here is, you know, you talked about it a decent amount in some of your responses for the quiz, but
Mhm.
I think there is like a feel to trick-taking games, and I think the way that your videos capture the feel, um, the variability, the short form, the fact that, there kind of is like a little bit of a language that can you like night you to get into them and then learn more, all those different things. It's just like a really unique bit, but I don't know. Like I said, I'm not in the trick-taking bubble or community as much as like I would like to be, but I think it's just such a cool community. When I got my package from PGC of 535 and Bridge City
Oh yeah.
Poker, there's a
Uh-huh.
handwritten note like, "Thank you so much for supporting our games," and it's just touches like that that really makes this part of the community just feel cool and welcoming. And I think that you do a good job. Well, obviously, do a really good job with that because I just, like I said, watch and rewatch your
Yeah.
videos.
No, I think you're 100% like you're hitting the nail on the head. I feel like the community itself has, from the start, like when I first started getting into this, it has a sense of openness, like willingness to show off these games that I haven't seen too much. Like I've kind of hunted out mechanisms I love in the past, and a lot of times I don't really find people there who like love it. Like when I was first trying to find people who liked trick taking, a lot of it was more traditional trick taking folks, so who play, you know, bridge, euchre, doppelkopf, like older games, and they have, a lot of tradition, and there's a lot of like the right way to play. And if you mess up, like you always feel, you might feel that sometimes too. I feel it on Board Game Arena when you're playing a game against people who know the game. And this is any type of game, like Hanabi. If you've ever played Hanabi on BGA, or like any game where people have partners like teach you, there's sometimes a little bit of nerves because you're like, did I mess up? Um, but what I found is a lot of times people in like the Discord for trick taking, or like in the comments on my channel, or anyone I meet who's super into trick taking at cons, there's almost like a very open, fun feeling to it all. And I don't know if it's just this section of board games are just super kind, or, and maybe this is wishful thinking. What I want to believe is the genre of trick taking is kind of around that idea of hanging out with friends around a handful of cards, where you've kind of internalized the gameplay to the point where you can chat, get to know each other, and it almost is like a facilitator to like learn more about people. I've found that um, at cons, like I went to BGG Con last November, and a couple people recognized me, and it was one of the like first times I've been recognized, and it was such a wild feeling, that uh, uh, I didn't know what to expect really, and they were like, "We'd love to play a game with you," and I said, "Yeah, that sounds great," and we sat down like the next day or something, and we were able to play a new game to everyone. And after we learned it and we were playing, we got to like know each other while playing. And so I wonder if this genre just like facilitates this idea of hanging out and community and being kind and nice to each other. And whereas other genres, like I've gone into like really heavy Euro games where a lot of people are thinking all the time, like your thoughts and your your brain capacity is like on the cards and the board and the strategy. Whereas I think in trick taking, it is a little more heads up. You're seeing what people play. Your turns are really quick. So you're looking at the people, you're reading them, you're getting into, who they are sometimes. So I don't know if it's the community itself and the genre itself. Maybe again, this is wishful thinking, but I love like the type of game where you can sit down for as long as you want, because you can always just keep playing hands and hands of this type of game, and just be with people and friends and get to know and foster this kind of community. I found out like early on that that is kind of the people who like trick-taking games, is people who love to just be there, be present, and chat. Um, when I was in high school, I would do this thing where every time after school, I would just like be in the parking lot just talking to friends for like hours. It's just the thing I love to do, is just to like chat. And I think in my adult life, trick taking and like trick taking meetups and cons have been the only thing that I can find that's been like that. Just like the feeling of hanging out with friends. So I feel like that's kind of like this community, just like getting to know people, really caring about the people at the table that you're with, and having that like communication and that conversation facilitated by that gameplay, which is really fun. But yeah, it's a great community.
Yeah, there are a ton of good, astute points in there. I could fish and talk about any of them. I think you mentioned the flow or the way that the games move. It is quicker, and that definitely gives it a different feeling. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it hopefully isn't taking super long to make that decision, and everybody then can just be there with each other, and that's what I like in games too. Maybe not all games all the time, but
Right. Yeah, I think they have their place. Yeah, but like trying to do what they do, it does it well, I think. Yeah.
yeah. And I sometimes consider myself to be competitive. I guess it really depends on the situation, but when it comes to board games, I honestly don't really care a ton. And I do think that trick takers do lend themselves well to being usually quicker. So if you lose a 15-minute game, it's like, whatever. Like,
Yeah. And I think what's nice, that's a great point. And what I love about that point is that it works both sides, where if you want to be competitive for a hand and really try to like try your hardest and win, and then you win and you're like, that was awesome, or like if you want to just be like, you know what, I'm just like, this is a learner's game for some people, or if I'm just like having a good time, or if that's just who you are, where you're like not very competitive, you can just play a hand and not care. So it's nice because I know people who, yeah, sometimes have trouble shutting off that competitive side. And I love playing trick taking with them because they can like really go for it, in a hand. Or like if they lose, they're not too jaded or upset. So yeah, it's kind of like a jack of all trades kind of genre, which I love.
cool. So I guess kind of, I mean, this seems like an introductory type of question, but it's come in here later in the podcast. What initially kind of attracted you to trick-taking games or got you into them? When was that?
That's a great question. I started off playing Hearts on my family's computer. And I think what's really fun is everyone almost has like their own childhood or like growing up trick taking experience. And not everybody, because I know a lot of people have actually gotten in through like the crew or like Fox and the Force, which is great. But um, I played a lot of the Hearts on the family computer. And then in high school, someone I was just talking to about games on the computer, like pinball, like Space 3D pinball. And then I brought up Hearts, and they're like, "Oh, whoa, like, have you played the game itself, like the actual game?" And I was like, "Oh no, I didn't." Like they never clicked to me in my head. Just like growing up with technology, sometimes you don't realize like, oh, of course, that's a deck of cards. Like I could play that physically. And they're like, "Yeah, like my dad plays. We should play." And so I played Hearts for a bit in high school, and then when I left to college, I didn't really play many like modern board games. And I think near the end of college, I was getting into like Castles of Burgundy and like a little bit of like tipping, like that Will Wheaton show, like Game Tabletop, I think. Game. Yeah, anyway. That show kind of brought me more back into the fold of like modern hobby gaming. And then it was one of those moments where I was researching more modern games, and I was like, wait, what was that game I played like with cards? Like, is that something? Found out it was called trick taking. I went to Japan, and remember leafing through a booklet of games at Tokyo Game Market that I wanted to go to, and there was like a trick taking game, and oh, is there trick taking here? And I went and I got um, some early copies of like Familiar's Trouble and like some Taiki Shinzawa ones, like Zimbabwe Trick and stuff like that. So that kind of sparked my re getting into it. And then I felt like there was kind of like flash forward a bit, I learn best through videos, and I found out like trick taking on BGG isn't really like well covered, or like kind of not well loved. A lot of like low ratings for games that I think are great, just because they are trick taking, like light or fair maybe. And so that's why I started the channel. It's just because I was going to Japan, getting games from Japan, and being like, wow, a lot of these trick takers don't have videos on them. So I kind of fell into the rabbit hole of trick taking through a mix of I remember how fun Hearts was, that nostalgia, and then seeing this kind of uncovered kind of area of the hobby that was just super interesting to me. So I kind of just started digging, and it got more and more interesting, and still is just so fascinating to me.
Cool. That's a really neat, natural
Yeah,
progression and reintroduction into
yeah,
something
totally.
that you're interested in. So, kind of again, I guess we're getting toward the end here. Anything that you kind of want to comment on, things that you're working on? I know I think not your last video, but the video before your last, you were talking about your channel's kind of life cycle and how you're at your halfway point
Yeah.
and how you'll still, do videos. And I won't get into the video like a ton. I just think that's neat. Like you wanted to do it for 5 years and everything like that. But you're also designing, and you've also done a lot of development work as well. So is there anything in those experiences that you're excited for continuing, or anything that you kind of want to do?
Yeah. No, so I kind of love I watched like I watch a fair amount of YouTube, and similar with what you said about watching channels and kind of like while doing chores or like getting into the flow. It's almost like this like Zen flow. Like I'll do the same thing. I'll turn on like the Dice Tower or Rada or like no pun, and I'll just get into a flow of like listening to their thoughts and like getting really into it. Or like Candace has like a wonderful podcast, or just like the Four Corners. Like I could list off a bunch, but I um also like outside of gaming YouTube, there was this one channel called like Unis Honest, where their idea was a year of videos and then they like deleted the channel. And I thought it was really cool. I thought it's like a really interesting concept. And I once I started making videos, I was like, well, I don't want to be doing this forever. So what's like a natural endpoint? And I thought a natural endpoint would be interesting if and only if there was like a fun thing at the end. So like Unis honestly like deleted the channel, which is like pretty wild. Like you can't find any other video. I think people like re-upload, but anyway. Um, uh, what I thought would be interesting, because I get requests for it all the time, and naturally so, are people like, oh, you like trick taking games? Like, what are your favorite? Like, that's a great question. And I thought, well, part of the channel reason was to find the best trick taking games. So naturally, I combined the two and was like, how about at the end, there's like a top, X amount of trick taking games. I think why I really like that is I kind of like, maybe this is more like school brain, but I like deadlines. I like endings. I think it's like super healthy to like really enjoy where you're at if you're like, okay, that's like it's finite. Um finite with an asterisk, because like you said, I think I'm gonna still try to make videos. And then I think part of the thing with ending the channel is I've just been doing a lot more development and design work, which I personally love. Um, I started designing actually before the channel, and it's like that element of my brain that I love to like tinker with and like be creative on like a different kind of way with. And I found that like putting a video out is super fun, um, but it's also nice to have like a physical thing. So like game design and like getting your game printed has like such a really cool like tangible thing to it, which is awesome. Obviously, like videos, like they lead to like meeting people, and so like there's also that like physical thing there. But there's something to like having a like a like, oh wow, this is like it went from an idea to like a like a heart. It's almost like gardening or something, like someone's like, I planted this seed, I have this like tomato now. um but yeah, so what's wild is they kind of, what's the phrase, like dovetailed Is that the right phrase? They dovetailed into each other a little bit, because how I started like development work was I got approached by people who like knew my channel, and the channel has like been such an amazing kind of avenue into like meeting people in the industry and being like, hey, are you making a trick taking game? Like, I'd love to help. Or them coming up to me and being like, hey, I'd love your opinion on this. Like, you played so many that like I imagine you could kind of be a really good litmus test person. Like, hey, is this a game? Does it work? And so a lot of the development work has been really fun, because oftentimes if the game doesn't quite work, I can like think of other ways that games have solved this problem. It's almost like a toolbox. I'm reading Jeff Engelstein. I never considered the name. Jeff Engels. Yeah. He has he co-writes with someone else, I think Isaac something, a book about like the encyclopedia of game mechanics. And it's super interesting to read through that. And it is almost like different tools of like, oh, you want to do an auction? Well, there's like 20 different ways to do an auction. What fits best in this game? So I feel like that with trick taking games is like someone will be like, here's my trick taking game. And I'll be like, ooh, it feels a little restrictive here, or a little loose here, or the scoring doesn't work here. I'm like, here are some like other cool ways that it's been done. Do you want to riff off that? Do you want to use that? What do you want to like do? So development has been really fun, because you can like get a game, see where it kind of gets snagged on, and then come at it with like a million different like Allen wrenches and tools and stuff. I love design as well, because I tried to do different design methodologies. Like there's like the Japanese way, where it's like you design a game that has interesting mechanisms and an interesting scoring, and then you mash it together. There's some that are kind of like Sean Ross's way of designing, where it's like take an idea, or like take an older design that like isn't modernized and kind of modernize it, which has been really fun. Or like thematic designing. Like I did a trick taking deck building game on improv, and that's been really fun, because it's like whenever you're hit with a design question, you can just go to the theme first, which really helps. Like oftentimes people say this a lot with trick taking games, but the theme is kind of pasted on, or like it doesn't really have a theme. And what I've noticed is when you actually design with a theme in mind, it's really helpful to answer those questions. Like for example, a big thing in trick taking is if you play the same number, does the later one win or the first one win? That comes up in like a fair amount of trick taking games. And in the game I was designing that was about comedy, I made it to where like the first number wins, because a joke when it's told a second time is less funny. So it's like it's cool to have like thematic reasons, and I think players remember it more. So I kind of love that. So I've been dabbling just in different design principles, like theme first, like modernizing, and like Japanese, which has really been fun. So I'm trying to look at different ways. Like the one that you mentioned about John sounds really interesting. Like to like get feedback from graphic design or art, and then have that be part of the game is super interesting. I've talked about this before, but like in film, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, they couldn't afford horses, so they had to somehow mock up the horse idea. So they like pretended to ride a horse, and like someone behind had coconuts that like made the clapping noise, which is so great because it made the movie funnier by having that restriction. So sometimes I'll do the same, where like I'll want to make this crazy game with like 3,000 cards, like the deck builder game. And they're like, I'm like, oh wait, that's impractical. So then I have to like rein it in, makes it more creative, makes it more like interesting to have that constraint. So it's been really fun. Yeah, long rant aside, I've been working on some really cool projects that are going to come out like in a year or two. Some that are like a little more indie, some that are like bigger than I could have really imagined when starting this, which is great. And yeah, it's been really fun to do kind of a dabble. I've worked with like a lot of different publishers, which has been really fun to see like methodology behind the scene. Some publishers kind of have a certain process, and some of them are like a little bit more loose, which is like really cool to work in both of those kind of flows. So it's been really eye-opening, like to go from someone who is just like watching the Dice Tower and just like really into like the scene to like being a little bit more into it has been one of those like peek behind the curtains that's been just endlessly interesting. So it's been really fun. So even if the channel kind of, you know, after 3 years or so starts to be more, once a month videos or something, um, I think it'll still be really fun to make a video and also like do some design and maybe like I know like some channels do like updates, so that could be something fun too, where it's like um here's the best of the best, the cream of the crop that I've played like in that month. Or maybe updating that top 100 list. That'd be wild. Yeah.
That's all super exciting. I'm looking forward to trying out all the games that you had your hand in. And I know the kind of the all tricks, all play bundle, you did a lot of development work with that, correct?
Yeah.
Or was that or sale? My brain, like I said, a
No,
lot of
yeah.
stuff is entering. So
No, no, you're great. So yeah, sale, which is actually it's gonna show up at my doorstop like this week, which is wild. I did the expansion on that, which was super, super, super fun. That was cool to design from an expansion mindset because the game itself is like well loved, like pretty rock solid. I think expansion design is so fascinating to me because it's one of those things where it's almost like getting back to movies or films, or like have you heard those situations where like an author will pass on the rights to a series to like their kid or like a different author, and like that author has to kind of like get the reins, and sometimes it's like doesn't go as well, or sometimes it's a little different, which you're always nervous of. But that was really fun. So like the sale, I did that where I had to come up with like new characters or like map tiles, um, and I wanted them to be like in the spirit of it. So it's almost like you're designing for someone's like um, type of design or type of game style. So that was really fun. Um, but then also I worked on Mori, which was Daniel Newman and Beth Sobel, which was super fun. That one was really cool to kind of work around. There were some core examples in the design that had to be there, but you could like move some things around. So it was almost like a puzzle. That was a really cool one. So it was cool to like take mechanics and move them around. So it's been some really interesting, like different development. Um, Even though they've all been development, they've been very different development, which is cool. Yeah.
neat. Well, I'm excited for sale because I think my copy will be coming pretty soon too. Or maybe I'm not sure if it's this week. I'm not sure. I checked the tracking. I don't know if it's available.
Yeah,
But
totally.
then when all the tricks or all trick takers here or whatever it's named,
Yeah.
it'll be that's super exciting and whatever else you have in development and design. And maybe from an expansion standpoint, you can make your deck builder like nice and trim to start, and then just keep making expansions for that so it can become the 3,000 cards that
Yeah,
you want it to become someday.
the Dominion, the modern Dominion. We'll see. Maybe I'll do a seaside. Yeah, just go. But yeah, no, I'm super excited. I think like the next year or two is gonna just be like so exciting. But yeah, thanks. That means a lot. That I think like you're saying, playing two-player, like early on you said two-player trick taking was um up until like pretty recently, like Fox the Forest maybe. Like there wasn't much. But I feel like there's like now and in the future are gonna be tons of really good ones. So I'm super excited, especially for sale.
Mhm. All right. So I've got a final question, which I think is kind of going to be my final question for anybody ever, maybe, unless people hate it and I have to change it, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But as it's, I mean, we talked about some video games, even a little bit of rap,
Yeah, that's it.
everything, all fair game. So just kind of give one thing that you've watched, been watching, read, or reading, listening to, any sort of thing that you're really kind of feeling and want to recommend, or something that's been stuck on your mind lately?
That's so good. Uh oh man, that is so good. I oh, that is so good. I recently saw well, I already recommended a short. I want to do it. I recommended a short. I don't want to do another movie. I went to a concert a week ago of this band called Explosions in the Sky, and it was really, really good. It's just this I mean, you gotta like an instrumental music. But it was this very calming um music, and it was uh I kind of so when I development I kind of like listening to stuff that like gets you into a flow. So I've been really getting into like flow based music, and that was a really good one. I think, I mean, tying it back into trick taking, there's like an idea of flow state where you aren't like playing the game, like, okay, you're still playing the game, but you're not like actively thinking about playing the game. Like, um, I mentioned to you in our correspondence that I did like a thesis on horror movies and horror video games, and the context of the thesis was in the terms of identifying as the main character and like what people can do to identify as the main character more. And some of it is like who they are, like do they look like you, and like is that like your same age, and like do you feel like that as your person, and how sometimes video games sometimes for for certain people let them immerse themselves in the game more, because like when they move forward the character moves forward, so there's this like cognitive connection there. But some people like they're holding a controller and that like brings them out of it. um so what I'm really into is like the idea of flow state and like trick taking, where it's like, yeah, you don't really realize you're playing a game, you're just like in it. And so yeah, I went to a concert of this like instrumental band called Explosions in the Sky, and I felt that flow state, which was really, really nice. So that's my that's my recommendation if you like, yeah, getting into like kind of just a vibe. That's
I'll definitely have to check that out because whenever I like writing, or if I ever have to do reading and there are other sounds that I want to kind of block out, I'll put in things that obviously don't have, a ton of words or anything that's just going to distract me. So I'll check out Explosions in the Sky. That sounds great.
yeah, I hope it I hope it goes well. It's like rock.
Okay.
It's not too wild. It goes quiet, it goes loud. I feel it's always like one of those things where you recommend, or like you put music on for a party and you're like, "Ugh," like, that like hesitancy, the immediate hesitancy that you get when you give a recommendation.
Well, no
But
matter what, I I think I'll appreciate it. There are very few things where I try, even if it's not for me, and I'm like,
yeah.
ew, that's terrible.
Okay, good. Good, good,
Okay.
good.
All right, very cool. Well, wow, there are a lot of very uh, interesting things that we were able to talk about, get to one way or the other, and I had a ton of fun. So, well, audience, if in the 0% chance that you somehow are listening to this podcast before you heard of Taylor's YouTube channel, I definitely check out Taylor's Trick Taking Table, and additionally, just be on the lookout for a lot of cool projects in the next couple of years. And
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Ryan. This was so much fun. I had an absolute blast. That quiz was amazing. I don't want to like gush, but it was fantastic. Thank you. And the questions after were absolutely amazing.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much, and thanks to anyone listening. And maybe in a few years, handful of years, we'll have to do it again. Who knows?
For sure. Yeah. No,
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Intertextual Cardboard Experience. Feel free to reach out via email, which is vodthepod@gmail.com, or check out my Instagram with the same name. There's not much on there right now, but I'm looking forward to working on the Instagram and other forms of social media and a website a little bit more in the future. Until then, keep playing, watching, reading, listening, experiencing. Thank you.